What's up, DC Natives? Back to another BTAS recap review. And guys, today we're checking out Harley, one of the best episodes of Batman the Animated Series. And guys, this episode's really cool, right? I haven't watched it in a while, but when I watched it again, like a couple days ago, and I actually watched it again right before I made this video, so I watched it a couple times so I could give you guys a good review. But when I watched it, it really shows how Mr. Freeze is as a character. His origin, his motivations, and the voice actors do a great job. And then Mr. Freeze is a good, formidable opponent against Batman. Like, their fight sequences are really cool. But guys, this episode won by a landslide in the vote. Like, I do like a voting poll every week on my community tab on this channel. You guys can vote. I'll actually release one right after I release this video. But last week I released a poll, and the poll was pretty much which episode should I do next. And it was Harley and Ivy, Riddler's Reform, and POV, which POV is like the one for Name Montoya. Now, Harley won by a landslide, guys. Harley and Ivy was in second. We may do that one eventually, but for now, Harley won, guys. And I was really excited to watch it again. And this episode is just done so well. The pacing, Mr. Freeze, like, you really get what his motivations are. You kind of feel bad for him. Now, this episode starts out, and you see that Gotham Corp, this one company, their different factories are being attacked by this guy who has, like, a freeze gun. And this one reporter is just reporting it on, like, the news, and they actually spoke with the head chairman, or, like, the CEO of Gotham Corp, Ferris Boyle. Now, this guy, he's all like, oh yeah, we're Gotham Corp. If you guys have any problems with us, like this person's attacking us with a freeze gun, we feel bad for you, we can help you out, we can just talk about this. And like, we are always helping the people. Now, this is a lie. This guy's just saying this to pretty much cover up the situation. Actually, all he cares about is money, alright? When we start to see this guy's his whole, like, his morals, his ethics, and what's wrong with this guy later in the episode, what he does to Mr. Freeze, what he does to Victor Freeze. Actually, no, Victor Freeze. I always think Victor Freeze when I read it. Does anybody else think that? Like, I always think that, but it's actually Victor Freeze. But still, we go on, and we have Batman, and he's going after this. He actually tries to take down Mr. Freeze at one of his, like, attacks on this company, right? At one of the factories. Now, he goes after him. Mr. Freeze attacks. There's a cool action sequence. You see him fight off, and Mr. Freeze actually has, like, his henchmen, and they leave one of the henchmen behind. So when Batman shows up, he shows up when they're unloading, like, these different boxes, these different boxes into their van, but Batman shows up, takes out a bunch of them, he punches them, takes them out, and you got one of them that, when Mr. Freeze shoots, it hits him right in the leg, and freezes, like, his whole, lower body. Now, instead of being like, hey, we can help you out, we can get you back in the van, Mr. Freeze is like, no, screw him. He should have got out of the way. I'm like, dang. He's like, his incompetence is what led him to this situation. Now, the guy's like, but he's one of us. Mr. Freeze is like, oh, do you want to end up in the same situation? Like, no. So they go with him, they jump in the van, they leave. Batman actually helps this guy, saves him, and Mr. Freeze gets away for another day. Now, Batman gets this guy back to the Batcave, actually pretty much heals him, he's all good, but Batman starts looking into this, and is thinking, okay, how can I, who is this guy? Who is this Mr. Freeze? Because he found out his name was Mr. Freeze when he attacked Mr. Freeze at, like, this factory, and Batman coming in, he was like, Freeze, and Victor Freeze is like, well, it's Mr. Freeze, actually.
Freeze! That's Mr. Freeze to you.
And I just like that line, because it's a good way to introduce his name, for one. And it could be a little cheesy for some people, but the delivery by the voice actors, Kevin Conroy and the voice actor for Mr. Freeze, is just done so well. But as we continue the episode, Batman actually has, like, a cold, right? Like, if you're around Mr. Freeze and all his cold temperatures, it's hard not to get cold. Like, come on. Now, Alfred gives him pretty much chicken soup. He's like, hey, the best way to cure a cold is with chicken soup. Now, Bruce goes to a meeting with Ferris Boyle, and he's like, hey, do you know who this is? And this guy's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know what's happening. Who is this guy who's attacking us? And Bruce is like, wait, but didn't you say that you'll help him out, right? If this guy shows up, you'll help him out and maybe find out the motivations of this person. And Ferris is like, no. If we find him, we're arresting him, taking him away, putting him away in jail. And Bruce is like, I thought you said you're for, like, the community. You're trying to help out people. And Ferris is like, no, that's just a lie. That's just for coverage, for the news. I'm actually just looking more for money, right? And he's like, hey, I got a meeting to get to. I gotta go because I'm getting an award for all my work at Gotham Corp. And Bruce is like, okay. And Bruce is kind of like, this guy is not a good person. And then he walks away, he's like, alright, I guess where your award actually suits you, like, you earned it. And Ferris is like, hey, thank you, Bruce. Ferris thinks that Bruce is on his side, but Bruce is Batman, he's just there to investigate, right? But what he finds out is Bruce actually later shows up to this one event, because Mr. Freeze, he's like making this whole like freeze gun with all his henchmen. He's making this, and he shows up to one of the events that Ferris is having, with all his like workers, all these different people to like get to know Gotham Corp as a company. Now, Mr. Freeze, in like his little cave or so, like his little like hideout, is making this thing, but Batman shows up, takes down some of the henchmen, goes after Mr. Freeze, but Mr. Freeze takes him down. There's another cool action sequence. We find Batman, and he's just frozen, right? And he's trying to get out. Mr. Freeze goes off to do his plan, but Batman eventually gets out and starts heading off to defeat Mr. Freeze. Now, what we see is Mr. Freeze comes in with this big gun, this big freeze gun with his henchmen, freezes all around this building. The building that Ferris is having like this meeting with all his different workers and just having like a party, you know? Like trying to give a word to him. Like saying how much they love him as a CEO. And these people are just praising him for what he isn't. They're thinking he's a good man where he isn't actually a good man. He's actually a bad man, right? But we have this, and Bruce is inside as Batman, and he finds out, okay, I know a solution to try to get in and find out more about Mr. Freeze. And what he does is he actually goes to one of the security guards who's just falling asleep, and Bruce disguises himself as a security guard, and he takes up this plate, tells the security guard, like, hey, you go party, I'll take up the job. And the security guard is like, really? You want to take up this sucky job? Alright, I'm gonna go party. So Bruce takes up this job, and he's still like sneezing, you know, he still has a cold. And what happens is he finds these different records, and he finds that Victor Freeze actually worked for Ferris Boyle at one time. And Victor Freeze used all his money for this company to build like this tube to put his wife in, Nora. And he's doing this whole process, he was using a lot of money, but at the same time he's getting close, he was about to save his wife. And his whole thing was like, okay, if I save my wife, I could then be good, I could have a good life again, because he wasn't really having a good life. But Ferris came in and was like, hey, use all this money, you can't do that. And Victor Freeze was like, come on, please, I beg you, let me save my wife. And Ferris was like, no. So he kicked Victor. It's like the chemicals. Victor then pretty much has like this symptom that he has to be below sub-zero. Like if he's above sub-zero, he can die. So now he's messed up. Nora, the tube is just broken, so Nora's dead. And pretty much Victor is just not doing well. So Victor wants revenge. Ferris ruined everything he was doing. He ruined his life. Now, Batman's looking through this, but that's when Victor Freeze, Mr. Freeze, shows up, shoots Batman, freezes him again. And that's when Mr. Freeze carries out his plan, right? He goes to Ferris, he freezes his legs, says, I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting to get my revenge at you. Do you know what it feels like? And Ferris is like, I beg you, don't hurt me. And Victor's like, I remember begging for me to save my wife, but you wouldn't listen to me, and I'm not going to listen to you now. And he's about to kill Ferris, but so Batman shows up, takes out Mr. Freeze, and actually uses the, he starts fighting, and Mr. Freeze actually chokes him, almost kills Batman, but Batman uses the chicken soup, hits him, breaks the glass, and Mr. Freeze is like his whole uniform, and now he's almost dead, right? Because now he can't really breathe. But Batman eventually gets him to safety, but then Victor is now a prisoner in Arkham Asylum, alright? He's in prison, and he's just in there with this one, like, I would say it's like a globe, right? And it has like a dancing ballerina, and it's pretty much like Nora. And Victor says, I'm sorry, I failed you. I hope one day I can hold your hand, your warm hand, and I can have a good life. And that's how the episode ends, guys. That's how the episode ends with Victor. And a couple other notes at the end of the episode. You see Batman, and he actually tells Ferris, like, good night. Pretty much they're stopping Ferris' whole plans with this whole company, Gotham Corp, because Batman knows he's a bad guy. He did some bad things to Victor and ruined his life. So Ferris is not going to walk away from this either. But Batman stopped Mr. Freeze. He stopped the villain. But one of the best moments in this episode is in like the second act sequence where Batman showed up at Mr. Freeze's hideout when he was building like the big freeze gun, and Batman got frozen. He was actually in like the clutches of Mr. Freeze, and Mr. Freeze started talking, saying, do you know what it feels like to not be in a warm environment? Like all you could be in is in a freezing environment. You don't know what warm feels like anymore. You don't know what a warm hand feels like. You don't have a partner. And it's like he pretty much Mr. Freeze is alone. He doesn't know what environment feels like. He doesn't know what life feels like. He's just a frozen guy who has to stay in this container, and he doesn't even have his wife. He can't carry out his plan. All he has is this notion of revenge against this guy named Ferris. So it's a big deal. I really like this episode because it just shows Mr. Freeze's origin, his motivations just so well. But yes, overall this episode is an amazing episode. One of the best episodes of the series. And if you really want to get into the character of Mr. Freeze, watch this episode, right? And I'm overall gonna give this episode a 9 out of 10. Definitely recommend you check it out. But now, with the review out of the way, let's get to DC Comics coming out this week. Now, first up for the week, we got Dark Knight's Death Mail number 3. And guys, this is the 3rd issue in this big series, this big event written by Scott Snyder, drawn by Greg Capullo. Now, the writing and artwork is amazing in this issue, and we find out where Superman has been this entire time. And adding the fact that we got new evil Batman like Batrocis, Batman and Atrocitus combined, and you got Darkfather, which is a Batman Darkseid hybrid. So a lot of stuff happens in this issue, and that's actually a really good cliffhanger, so you definitely want to check it out. But guys, another issue coming out this week, we got Flash number 759, which is Finish Line Part 1. It's the final story in Joshua Williams' Flash run, this big run that's spanned like 100 issues. The Reverse Flash is taking over Flash's body, and we also have the return of different characters like Impulse, Max Mercury, Jesse Quick, and one more big Flash family member. This is an awesome issue that you definitely don't want to miss if you're a Flash fan. Now, another issue coming out this week is Batman the Outsiders number 15, The Demon's Fire Part 3, and we see Rajal go to Tokyo, Japan. We see him carry out all his plans, and we see a lot of Rajal go in this issue. Plus, we see Batman the Outsiders finally approach him. So a lot of big stuff happens in this issue. A lot of stories that Brian Hill's been developing ever since issue number 1 start coming full circle. So you definitely don't want to miss out on this issue. Now, another issue coming out this week is Detective Comics number 1025. It's a Joker War tie-in. And in this issue, we see Batman and Batwoman go away Enterprises to save Lucius Fox. So a lot of different action sequences and a lot of cool moments in this issue. And obviously, it's going to be a great issue because it's written by P.J. Thompson. So check it out. Now, going to our smaller releases of the week, we got Wonder Woman number 760, and in this issue you see Wonder Woman actually get asked help from Maxwell Lord. Now, he's usually an evil villain, but what does he need help with? And will Wonder Woman actually trust him? And if she does trust him, will that lead her down a good path or a bad path? You'll find out if you read the issue. We got the Green Lantern Season 2, number 6, and this issue is written by Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison's been doing a great job on this series. It's been a crazy story, like crazy stories all around, and a lot of stuff happens in this issue that if you're a big fan of Green Lantern, you like the Green Lantern lore, then you should definitely check it out. Now, another issue coming out this week is we got Superman number 24, and this is Chaos Part 2, and we see Superman and Dr. Fate team up. Enough said. Now, the last issue coming out this week is The Batman's Grave number 9. Now, Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch have been doing a great job in this series. One of the best like DC series coming out right now. The writing's phenomenal, the art is great, and it really shows Batman as a character and as a detective. So you definitely want to check it out, guys. I actually really recommend it. Now, guys, that's going to wrap up all the DC comics coming out this week. Yeah, there's a couple more, but you should go search them out, alright? And by the way, I actually have reviews of Dark Knight's Death Mail number 3, Flash number 759, and Detective Comics number 1025 already out. I already have the reviews out. You can check them out. Just check out the channel, right? And they may pop up during this whole video in like the cards above. But guys, in the comment section below, tell me what you thought about this episode, Hard Advice. Do you think it's the best example of Mr. Freeze's origin story? And what would you rate this episode out of 10? Now guys, like the video, give a big thumbs up on each channel. Make sure to subscribe to my next BTAS recap review. Make sure you guys vote, because I'll be releasing a poll right after I release this video with 4 different episodes, actually 4 or 5 different episodes. Whichever one gets the most votes, that's the one I'll be reviewing next week. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and peace out.